Chronophages. Therefore, see that you act cautiously, not like fools, but like wise ones. Cherishing the time, because the days are evil. Ephesians 5:15-16. Wonderful biblical instruction. Cherish time, because the days are evil. There is such a thing as chronophages. What's it? Chronophages, from other Greek time and I will eat, also time eaters, is one of the terms of time management, denoting any distracting objects that interfere and distract from the main activity, work and other planned tasks. Chronophages can be animate, for example, colleagues with idle conversations, friends with empty calls, customers who like to chat, etc. Or inanimate, internet, computer games, TV, radio, etc. Wikipedia. Very precise wording. That is, these are people, or some kind of activities, empty hobbies or conversations that consume human time idly and naturally take away strength. Here, as they say, beware. Chronophages. Dangerous. This is something that will take away very important things in life, rob you and may leave you with nothing. The chronophagus, as a human enemy, can exist in its three main manifestations: inanimate, animate, and internal, in the form of laziness. And 5 categories. The first thing I would like to draw attention to is the inanimate chronophagus, that is, external distracting objects, games, entertainment. I'll highlight it from this. Computer games. The chronophage has a huge appetite here. Its purpose is mainly youth and children, although adults also get caught. Virtual reality, where, unlike real reality, you can easily be a hero, a great commander, a brilliant strategist, you can even become president. Over time, the computer chronophagus, if you do not banish it from your life, begins to do what it always does, devour time and take away strength, both emotional and physical. People who are affected by computer addiction usually suffer from chronic fatigue, irritability, indifference to the outside world, and often unreasonable anxiety. And eventually, the person loses their real identity. And the most terrible thing is that a very important and irreplaceable thing in life is being wasted. This is the most precious time allotted by God to man. Of course, the computer is the most remarkable invention of mankind, and it's good when people know how to use it, but, as the Holy Scriptures actually teach us, everything needs to know time and measure. All things are lawful to me, but not all things are profitable. All things are lawful to me, but nothing should possess me. 1 Corinthians 6:12. Nothing should possess me. And, of course, there is a great warning in this verse for all Christians. It is interesting, but, again, this disease affects not only young, but also adults and quite respectable people. I admit, it's funny to see how seriously different teams of players are being created, who play out all kinds of strategies and tactics of a different and only virtual nature. And God forbid we lose there. For some, it becomes a serious tragedy. Some people smash and break everything around them, sometimes even the computers themselves. The most ridiculous thing is that all such battles take place in a world that doesn't really exist. A virtual reality that doesn't exist. Of course, there is something useful in games, at least something related to strategy, but personally I have a feeling that the chronophagus, among other things, also sucks out a person's brains. Hence his victim's distorted mindset and interests. Computer gaming addiction is really changing human thinking. The virtual becomes reality, and vice versa. The second is everyday worries. Christ himself warned about this problem when speaking about the last times. Take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be burdened with gluttony and drunkenness and the cares of life, and that day overtake you suddenly. Luke 21:34. Everyday worries. There is always something to do, something to buy, someone to call, someone to visit, something to finish urgently. An example of a cottage. Of course, this is a wonderful place to relax, but only until this chronophagus begins to devour human time and energy. Once, the deacon of one of our churches, living outside the city, invited his neighbor, who was setting up his country house, to go to church on Sunday, give glory to God, and pray to Him. He, in principle, agreed to go, but for some reason, building a house turned out to be more important for him. And there was no way he could postpone it. At the same time, this man explained his action in quite good words. Here, they say, I'm trying for the children. They'll have a nice home. Time passed. And then one day that minister of the church noticed that for some reason all kinds of movements around the house had stopped, and his neighbor was nowhere to be seen. After a while, quite respectable-looking people appeared on the site. They were discussing something with each other. When the minister of the church came to ask where the elderly man who built this house had gone, he found out that he had died unexpectedly. The attack. But these people turned out to be his children, who came to sell what their father had built. That's the whole story. The cottage, in the form of a time eater, took away the most important thing from a person, his future in eternity. And it's sad. Once upon a time, Jesus Christ visited a house where two sisters Martha and Mary lived. Martha took care of the big meal, Mary listened to Jesus. But Martha was taking care of the great feast, and she came and said, Lord, or don't you need my sister to leave me to serve alone? Tell her to help me. But Jesus answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you care and fuss about a lot of things. But Mary needs only one thing, and she has chosen the good part, which will not be taken away from her. Luke 10:38-42. Mary chose the good part, which will not be taken away from her. The main thing is not to allow the vanity of everyday life to take away from a believer the most important thing, his spiritual life, life in God. It is important to set priorities in life correctly and manage your time wisely. Chronophages can be very invisible, but extremely dangerous. In fact, these are bandits, who sometimes imperceptibly rob those who come across them. Everyday worries. Or as the Bible says again, vanity of vanities. The third is animated chronophages. I would like to focus on this category in particular. The people you have to communicate with. I'll call them energy vampires, eaters of time and energy. A person cannot be without communication. That's understandable. And almost every person has those who are close to their home. These are friends, relatives, good acquaintances, kind neighbors, and so on. Communication is wonderful and necessary for everyone, but the same danger awaits everyone here. Chronophages, already animated. People who devour not only their own time, but also someone else's. Their appetites are amazing. A kind of energy vampires. They consume energy and time. For example, friendly communication or phone conversations. Especially dangerous for women. Of course, everyone needs to speak out sometimes. And there is a certain psychological need for this. But, again, everything needs to know the time and place. You can't talk for hours about the same thing or about everything and nothing at once. All things are lawful to me, but not all things are profitable. All things are lawful to me, but not all things edify. 1 Corinthians 10:23. Not everything is edifying. Everything needs to be measured. With all this, I want to note that chronophages are extremely voracious and often use cunning and at the same time funny techniques. The conversation seems to be ending and the friends seem to be saying goodbye or the girlfriends are with each other, but again there is some kind of clue and the conversation goes on and on. And there is no end in sight. Chronophages are very voracious. If you have given them a place in your life, then I assure you that they will, figuratively speaking, devour you without any compassion at all. Chronophages come to your house. By the way, there's a scarier option. You just can't hang up the phone here. It is difficult to expel the chronophage. Hints, as a rule, they don't really understand. It's inconvenient to use force, and it won't always work. Especially if it's your relative. The Chronophagus will eat you as much as you let it. Here you need to show character. But, there is also a special form of chronophages. Empty words. They're kind of typical representatives of spiritual vampires. Devourers not only of time, but of moral and spiritual forces. Their peculiarity is that they talk a lot, jumping from one topic to another without much pause. They often speak softly, making the other person tense up a bit. After all, you have to listen anyway, whether you want to or not. Even if someone pretends that he or she is not interested in the conversation or does not pay attention to such a chronophage, he or she will still talk, draining, in fact, the internal energy of his victim. In the house where I live, there lived an elderly, but quite cheerful woman, a typical representative, so to speak, of spiritual vampires. Her victims were people who inadvertently sat down to rest on a bench near the house. I once watched a grandfather, a little deaf with a stick, from the same house, who wanted to relax a little and sit on a bench. But, when communicating with this woman, he apparently got pretty tired and eventually tried to leave her. But that was not the case. She followed him like a shadow. Except that she didn't sit on his neck. It seems funny, but still quite unpleasant behavior of the Chronophagus. And the saddest thing is that this happens not only on the streets, but also in our Christian churches. People are naturally different, some really need financial help, some need moral support, and some just need communication. The church is called to this, to love her neighbors. In addition to evangelization, it is naturally necessary to help those who need both material, moral and spiritual help. Wisdom is needed here. Of course, denying a person that they need to talk to you is not always a good thing. And sometimes there are not very beautiful situations. Wisdom is really needed here. And not only wisdom, but also a gift from God, the ability to communicate. But there is another category of chronophages, empty ones. The fourth is empty cases. These are people who don't really say anything, they do. For example, they call you to an event, but it doesn't make any sense for the cause of God. And such an event will not glorify God. Let's say we can help someone, move furniture, take someone somewhere in our car, visit some friends or relatives, and so on. It is noted that often a person who is being helped will never personally help, but seeing someone's kindness he will certainly want to take advantage of it. Of course, in some cases, we should help our neighbors as Christians, but only on condition that the Holy Scriptures teach. Then, by applying all diligence to this, show virtue in your faith, and prudence in virtue. 2 Peter 1:5. The virtue of prudence. It is very important. Not every good thing turns out to be good. Any good deed requires prudence. If I see that the person calling me to an empty event is a dummy, then it's better to move away from that. And that would be wise. It is also noted that such chronophages often laugh at those whom they consider to be cleverly using for their own purposes. And they take away their precious time and energy. But, there is another chronophagus that you should also be aware of, because it is closest to us, it is ourselves, human laziness. Hence, the fifth is laziness. A nasty manifestation of human nature. An inconspicuous enemy, but very insidious and also extremely voracious. I was passing by the field of a lazy man, and by the vineyard of a man of little understanding. And, behold, it was all overgrown with thorns, and its surface was covered with nettles, and its stone wall fell in. And I looked, and turned my heart, and looked, and received a lesson. You will sleep a little, you will take a nap a little, you will lie down with folded hands a little. And your poverty will come as a passerby, and your need will be like a man armed. Proverbs 24:30-34. Human laziness is a robber who robs people, taking away very valuable time. By the way, not only time, but also well-being. You should be aware of this and fight laziness. Banish her from your life. The time allotted to people on earth can be compared to a big timer. There is such an action, before an important event, a large timer is turned on, which counts down the years, days, hours, minutes and seconds until the event is triggered. Whether it's the Olympics, elections, or something else. But in eternity, one might say, such a timer is turned on for every person. And time goes by. One of the very insidious and inconspicuous methods of the evil one is to devour a person's time allotted to him by God. That's why there are such parasites as chronophages. It is the parasites. And the trouble is that they work in a variety of ways and quite unnoticeably in people's lives. And it doesn't matter what form of this phenomenon affects a person, inanimate, in the form of computer games or all kinds of entertainment. Either in the form of worldly vanity or manifests itself through some personalities, spiritual vampires, draining our strength and wasting our precious time on empty, unnecessary, and sometimes downright crafty. Or it's just plain laziness. In principle, it is not so important. The main thing is that it is an enemy, and it must be fought. Here, again, wisdom and fortitude are needed. Therefore, see that you act cautiously, not like fools, but like wise ones. Cherishing the time, because the days are evil. Ephesians 5:15-16. Cherishing time, because the days are evil. There are three types of chronophages: inanimate, animate, and lazy. And there are 5 categories of chronophages that are worth paying attention to and how to deal with it. 1. The first is external meaningless, distracting objects. 2. The second is the worries of everyday life. The vanity of vanities. 3. The third is empty-mouthed, energetic vampires, time and energy eaters. 4. The fourth is empty cases. 5. The fourth is laziness. And again, here I recall a wonderful verse of the Holy Scriptures. All things are lawful to me, but not all things are profitable. All things are lawful to me, but nothing should possess me. 1 Corinthians 6:12. Be blessed.